Smartphones are everywhere. There are maps, our wallets, our memories, our social lives, and increasingly hold things for our security, like passwords, security keys, and two-factor authentication apps. But something interesting is happening, especially among Gen Z and younger millennials. Some people are intentionally walking away from smartphones and going back to the so-called dumb phones. No apps, no endless doom scrolling, no constant tracking. This sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about why younger generations are ditching smartphones, what they gain and what they lose, and why this trend has some surprisingly big implications for privacy, cybersecurity, and even how we as a society function. And joining me for this conversation is the man who grew up a lot like me, but older, a little bit older, without a smartphone, my co-host, Scott Wright.
Yes, I remember dial phones.
Yes, I do too. I remember upgrading my rotary dial phone to a push-button phone. Yeah.
Those were the days.
Yep. I know. And I actually remember purchasing my first modem I had an Apple IIe computer, and which cost ridiculous amount of money back then, and I bought a 56K modem. Yep. And I remember dialing up into the internet in the early 90s.
Yep. I had a 1200 baud.
Woo. Wow. That's blazing fast, Scott.
My first actual email address that anybody could send something to personally was in 1993.
Wow. Was that like CompuServe or what?
No, it was the Ottawa National Capital Freenet.
Oh,
run by out of Carleton University.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, I remember, I think my first email was also on the Cleveland Freenet, which ironically was one of the very first parts of Freenet in the whole country, I found out. So cool. It was very interesting.
It is a really interesting dilemma, in terms of how much computational power you should be carrying around with you.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays we carry a supercomputer, and now even more so, given that you can use ChatGPT, and now Apple has included AI features built into the operating system. But we have a lot of power in our pockets, for sure. And I think that's maybe the debate now, where we're seeing a lot more of the younger generation starting to push back a little bit on all this technology. Now, I also think that there's kind of a retro revolution happening across the world. So like I'm seeing that generation doing a lot of things that you wouldn't really expect the young generation to do. Like I saw a big thing on the news about how young Gen Z women are getting into knitting again, and they're trying to pull up patterns and things that were given to them from their grandmothers and things. And like that's become a very trending thing. So knitting and sewing and all those things. But also we're seeing this trend of retro video games. And I just saw a thing on the Nintendo 3DS is now becoming super popular again, and they're starting to buy them.
Oh, I thought you meant retro Switch. Like Space Invaders.
Oh, no, that's because we're really old, Scott. But that's like going back to the Atari 2600, which, by the way, was my first video game console. Yeah. So, which came out in like
I'm talking about playing Space Invaders in a pinball arcade with a CRT,
Yeah. Well, I did that too, Scott. But that is actually coming back too. Nice. Arcades, kids are going to arcades again like we did in the 80s and the 70s. And like all this stuff is coming back. It's like the old saying is like, what's old is new again. Right.
Yeah, it was inevitable, I guess. But it's interesting to see, you probably couldn't have predicted some of the things that, happened because of it. Or it's not quite as you would remember. Right.
Yeah. But I think the angle that Gen Z is taking, and I've talked to my kids about this as well, is like, what's going on with this resurgence of nostalgia, right? And bring back stuff from the past. And this generation is actually finding that things like mental health and burnout and doom scrolling, like these aren't healthy activities at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of new scientific data and coming out that putting a smartphone in front of a 5-year-old, may not be the best idea from a brain development perspective, right?
But I get it when you're a parent and you need something to distract the kid for just like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, back then, I mean, what would we call it? The boob tube, right? Like it was TV for us, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Stick us in front of the cartoons on Saturday morning and we weren't getting into trouble. Yeah, it's interesting to me to see how this is kind of shifted with this new generation. I'm also, we're not talking about AI much in this episode, but I've also hearing more rumblings of the Gen Z generation saying, we don't want to use AI. We think AI is not really as useful to someone, say, my generation, Gen X or a boomer, right? So we're starting to see some interesting things coming out of this generation. But one of the things I thought about a lot was, cell phones really extend our mind and our memories in a lot of ways. I mean, think about all the photos that we put on our phones. We're using it as not just a communication device, but we're using it for holding sensitive information and memories that we really didn't do before. I mean, do you remember we would have to carry around a film-based camera, take pictures, go get it developed,
and see if they actually turned out.
See if they actually turned out. Yeah, like you wait a couple days or a week, and then you get your photos back. And honestly, that was kind of like the most exciting part, because you're just like, oh, I can't wait to see what the photos look like. And now everything is so instant. Like you take a picture, it's instant. It's on our phone and it's there forever. And literally it could be there forever because it's going up to the cloud, right?
Well, not only that, but you have so many images now, you can't really curate. You just don't want to delete anything because there might be something important in there, right? So you got just a huge mass of images or videos, but
Yep. So I look at smartphones as like it's become much more than just a tool. It's really so significant in our lives. And in fact, I'd go as far to say that it's more valuable than a wallet or a purse in a lot of ways. I mean, if you lose your phone, you're more likely to freak out more than if you say you lost your wallet, which, a lot of people treat their phones as wallets these days.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny. It reminds me of back in 2012, 2011, when I did the Honey Stick project. You remember I was dropping USB drives everywhere, and then I did the one with the smartphones. So it was sponsored by Symantec at the time. And we dropped 50, at the time they were LG Android phones, in 5 different cities around North America, right? And one of them was in New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, and Ottawa. And kind of one of these things doesn't belong, but in any case, the New York one was interesting because it was actually on the NBC Today show for like a 10-minute segment or something. But I remember when they did the actual interviews, Tom Costello, the guy that does all the aviation crashes, right? It was out on the street interviewing people. And it's one guy going, my whole life is on my phone. And this was in 2011.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine what it's like today. Yeah. Even more so. That's really fascinating.
And those were in the days when there were no passwords mandated. So
that's right.
If you lost your phone, it was like, yikes.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess I'd say like the Gen Zs, the younger millennials, it's a good thing, right? I mean, they see, I think, the problems with smartphones in terms of privacy and tracking and ads and all of these things. And we have become really tied to these devices. So, the thinking of, well, if I just get rid of my smartphone and go to a dumb phone, I'm probably enhancing my privacy and even my security. And I could definitely see that for sure. Because, I mean, if you remember, Scott, we didn't have all these problems before cell phones. I mean, let's be real.
I think there's something to it. I mean, there's definitely some advantages certainly from privacy point of view. I think, we've pointed out, or it's easy to point out, where it could make things difficult if you aren't able to do multi-factor authentication, with an app or whatever. But overall, I think it probably is better, for your quality of life. You could still have a digital camera or something, right? I don't know how you'd work it all out, but I think there's actually a case to be made for developing a strategy that says, here's how you would live with a dumb phone and get around all the issues that that it raises.
It does come down to everything's a trade-off, right? And maybe we could talk a little bit about those trade-offs. So like you had mentioned, multi-factor authentication apps, password managers. Your phone is often used now as an authentication device to various services and work and everything else. Now, how dumb of a phone are we talking about, right?
Exactly.
Does the phone still allow SMS text messages? Because
I think you would expect they would do SMS.
Right.
And they probably could even maybe do data tethering. I don't know if you can get a dumb phone that actually does a Wi-Fi hotspot or not, but you probably could.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember that back when we had Blackberries, if you remember, like they still had Wi-Fi, they had the basic things and Bluetooth and all those things. But it's interesting to me because like, I think there is somewhat of a functionality that you're going to lose. And in fact, Kevin has brought this up on the show before that a lot of people, there's still people that don't have smartphones. And so when you go to a bank or you go, people in poor neighborhoods and things that don't have internet access, that's still a thing. And so there still has to be ways of doing things a manual way or paper-based or all of those things, right?
And I think there's also a case for about, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20% of the population that is elderly and just doesn't get, how to use a smartphone, to its fullest. And I'm thinking about, an elderly uncle that I have, who's on his own, and he's always sending me emails going like, Google did this weird thing. And it's nothing to do with Google. It's the website he was on, right? And so they just have no idea how to operate in that level of complexity, which we all sort of take for granted. And the millennials and younger generations, they've sort of grown up with it. So it's automatic. So I think there's definitely a case for, that whole segment of the population to have something that's simpler, that, you don't need all the scrolling and stuff. But yeah, the internet connectivity, multi-factor authentication stuff that's a challenge.
And then if you're not using it as a personal storage device anymore, like photos, I think that's the other thing that's coming back too, is I see kids these days with Polaroid cameras. Those are, are back, and so are the first digital cameras before cameras were built into cell phones. I mean, you could buy a camera with an SD card and take pictures.
I got about 5 of them.
Yeah, I know. I do too. And you got to carry around another device, but you aren't tethered to your phone now being your camera and all of those things.
Yeah, so. I mean, the problem with that is how many devices that you come across after you've taken the pictures will take your SD card or connect with your camera, and it's old non-USB connector.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of adapters out these days, but I mean, I think there's the digital ownership piece of all of this is like, I own my photos. I want to store those on a external storage drive or a USB drive or on my computer, and I don't want to put them in the cloud. And I think there's a lot of that happening now with the younger generation, is like they don't trust a lot of these big corporations, and you give your data to Google, you literally are giving your data to Google. So there has been this resurgence of, well, let's just put it on a device that I control. I'll use a old-fashioned camera to do it, and
So again, it's trade-offs, right? Because once you have it on a physical device, you could lose the device and never get those pictures back again, right? And whether it's Google or a paid service, whether it's iCloud, Apple, or Microsoft, the way I'm seeing it with clients that I'm doing security assessments with, government organizations, their view is the cloud-based storage is more secure, from a general security point of view, than keeping it on a device somewhere physically.
Right. I mean, it all goes back to what are you storing, right? And what's your threat model,
exactly.
At the end of the day.
And from an individual point of view, that's not quite the same. So, but I tend to probably trust, Apple and Microsoft more than Google for storing my photos or anything like that in the cloud.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'd be interested to hear people listen to this podcast. Would you trade your smartphone in for a dumb phone? Like, is that something you've been thinking about?
If you're doing this, share with us, how well it's working, what ideas you have that help people if they want to do this.
I think that's what we need to do is we need to find a Gen Z, somebody from Gen Z and has actually made this switch, and would love to interview them to talk about literally like, how is this going for you and how has this impacted your life? Because I see it definitely as challenging to do this, especially in today's world where everything is smartphone based. Like I think of things now of like, going to the airport. I mean, you could still print out a paper copy of your boarding pass, but most people these days, they're just using their phone now because it's just more convenient. But
yeah, for sure.
Now we're even seeing that with digital IDs can now be put onto your smartphone and your smartphone wallet. And so we're more and more now we're putting more things of importance on a smartphone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a growing number of use cases where it makes more sense to have the smartphone than to have a dumb phone, but there are some, and I think that each one has its own, trade-offs in some way, right? Are you using a dumb phone just so that you're not constantly scrolling? In that case, your dumb phone shouldn't have an internet connection, overall. So, you kind of got to think through the implications.
Yeah, there's a device I saw someone talking about. It's called Brick, and you essentially set it up and you can, it's a little block, and you put your smartphone on this block, and it essentially you have it configured to purposely block certain applications from notifying you, like if you have Instagram or something like that, and it'll actually put your device like on pause. Right. Depending on, so you can get a break from everything, because the alternative, and we've talked about this on the show, and shout out to one of our sponsors, Silence, for the Faraday bags, right? You can just stick your phone in a Faraday bag and you don't have to turn it off. And look at this, complete peace and silence.
Well, on iPhones you can do focus as well, right? So you can set up focus profiles so that certain apps don't notify you, which might be all you need for that use case.
I'd be interested to know how many people actually configure those things, though. I mean, the only one I use is the sleep function, because I don't want to get dings and pings and everything all night long on my phone. And I find that extremely helpful. At like 10 o'clock, that thing is in sleep mode and I don't want to get any notifications. But do you use the focus or the work setting, or I don't know. It just seems overly complicated to me, but that's just me. All right. But like we said, if you have comments on this, please let us know. We're on Blue Sky, or you could comment on YouTube. We would appreciate it. This is definitely an interesting conversation, and we'll see how many more of the Gen Zs ditch their smartphones in the future. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening. And until next time, stay safe, stay secure, and stay private. Thank you for listening or watching. If you liked this episode, hit subscribe, share it with your friends and colleagues, or jump into our community at sharedsecurity.net/supporter to keep the conversation going. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Shared Security.